The pace of Russia's territorial advances in Ukraine slowed significantly in September, with Russian forces seizing 44% less land compared to August, the Ukrainian monitoring group Deep State reported on October 1st. Russian troops captured approximately 259 square kilometers, 100 square miles, of Ukrainian territory during the last month, just 0.04% of Ukraine's total area. This marks the smallest monthly gain since May. In total, Russia now occupies around 19.04% of Ukraine's territory. Ukraine's most significant losses in September occurred near the village of Novopavlivka in Donetsk Oblast. Deep State analysts describe this sector as one of the most challenging sections of the front. Heavy fighting also continues around the town of Kupiansk in Kharkiv Oblast, near the Ukrainian-Russian border. In the Pokrovsk direction, Ukrainian forces reportedly managed to sustain effective defense. Analysts noted that roughly one-third of all Russian assaults were concentrated on the town of Pokrovsk and the surrounding areas. The cost of every meter here is significantly higher. Russia has approached the town from the south, and urban combat differs greatly in complexity from fighting in open areas. Additionally, there is virtually no defensive depth remaining, the report read. Over the past month, Ukrainian forces have been pushing back Russian troops who had advanced 15 to 20 kilometers, 6 miles, toward the strategic Dobropilya-Kramatorsk highway near the contested city of Pokrovsk. Since late August, Ukrainian units have recaptured several villages in the region, including Zarechne, Novoekonomikne, and Udakne. A Russian attack on an energy facility in the town of Slavutich in Kiev Oblast caused a blackout at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant on October 1st, the Energy Ministry said. Slavutich, a satellite town of the Chernobyl plant in northern Ukraine, was built to house evacuated plant personnel following the 1986 disaster. Earlier, a Russian drone attack on a substation in Slavutich caused power outages in the city and parts of the neighboring Chernihiv Oblast, according to local authorities. The Energy Ministry also reported an emergency situation at several facilities within the Chernobyl plant. Due to power surges, the new safe confinement, the key structure that isolates the destroyed fourth reactor of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant and prevents the release of radioactive materials into the environment, was left without electricity, the statement read. In February, a Russian Shahed-type drone struck the new safe confinement over Chernobyl's destroyed fourth reactor. The structure built to contain radioactive material was damaged, although no serious radiation leaks were caused. The news comes as the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the largest nuclear power station in Europe, which has been under Russian occupation since March 2022, has been disconnected from the Ukrainian electricity grid for a record over 100 hours. President Volodymyr Zelensky described the situation at the Zaporizhzhia plant as critical. Diesel generators are now supplying power to the plant, but one has already failed, Zelensky said. Russia has effectively lost Transnistria following Moldova's recent parliamentary elections, according to Igor Strelkov-Gherkin. After the defeat of pro-Russian parties, he anticipates that the region will be seized jointly by Moldova and Ukraine. Gherkin writes from prison. The situation in Transnistria has remained tense for 3.5 years, ever since our troops failed to break through to Odessa, failed to take Mykolaiv, and especially since our fleet was pushed back to the eastern coast of the Black Sea and trapped in its ports. Since then, the Russian Federation has lost the ability to provide Transnistria with real military assistance without the use of nuclear forces. This means we have no way to protect our garrison there. Peacekeeping forces, several hundred troops, the large number of Russian citizens there. Almost the entire population of Transnistria holds Russian citizenship. Our military pensioners, or our military depot filled with obsolete ammunition for Soviet artillery systems, but quite useful in modern warfare. And most importantly, we are unable to protect several vital rail and road crossings across the Dniester, which, in the event of a large-scale Western intervention in Ukraine, are simply obliged to become logistical hubs for the transfer of troops, cargo, and equipment from Romania to Ukrainian territory. Accordingly, it is precisely this territorial location of Transnistria that necessitates its elimination for the enemy during the intervention, or the war in Ukraine. It significantly shortens the routes for transporting troops, equipment, and also simplifies and increases their number. Therefore, it can be assumed that the enemy could, in the near future, literally within a few weeks, launch an operation to seize Transnistria. Moreover, unfortunately, given that we are unable to assist them, this operation will be completed very quickly, in a few days at most, and possibly within 1 or 2 days, if anyone there offers resistance at all, which from a military standpoint is completely pointless. The maximum depth of Transnistria is just over 20 kilometers at its widest point. The territory is hostile on all sides. Moldova on one side, Ukraine on the other. The operation will most likely be carried out on both sides. And resistance under these conditions is only possible in Tiraspol and Bender, which will have no effect. This is also considering that any troop or reinforcement transfers from Russia are physically impossible. There are 2 options. Either the West will postpone the situation in Transnistria for the future, since it doesn't interfere with them, but this option only applies if they expect to continue the war in Ukraine much as it is now. Or, if they are in a hurry to introduce their troops, they will liquidate Transnistria in the near future. Unfortunately, the initiative here is entirely theirs. Nothing depends on us. I very much doubt that the Russian Federation will engage in a full-scale war with NATO over Transnistria, because frankly, we are completely unprepared for such a war. We are not mobilized, we are not prepared for anything. Holidays and various sporting events continue non-stop instead of preparing for war. In Moscow, for the 4th time this year, as usual, they are relaying the paving stones. Meanwhile, refugees from the Kursk and Belgorod regions are streaming from the cities along the border deep into our territory, and there is destruction from constant airstrikes. In other words, we have not prepared for war and are not ready. Therefore, I believe that, unfortunately, Transnistria will be left to its own devices, and this island of the Russian world, this loyal outpost of Moscow, which has repeatedly attempted over the past 30 years to reunite with Russia officially, if not as a territory, then at least by creating an enclave similar to Kaliningrad, will, unfortunately, most likely be crushed by the enemy. This will send a serious signal to all our enemies, both outside the former Soviet Union and within the CIS. We await the decision that will be made. The decision will be made by the enemy, and we, unfortunately, will react passively. After Dnipro, Russia is now also attacking Kharkiv with drones. Moment of arrival of one of the drones was caught on video. Another deliberate attempt to terrorize civilians, simply to demoralize them. Ukrainian Antonov and 124 Ruslan, the world's heaviest cargo plane, landed at Ben Gurion Airport in Israel. It loaded an unmarked 40-foot container before taking off back to Europe. Similar containers have reportedly previously been spotted at Israeli Patriot SAM sites.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comment section. The membership link is in the description.
Rescues every day. We had a guy last week at 6 rescues in 6 days. You know, he's doing the job every day.